Hello and welcome, travelers. Are you ready to embark on an unforgettable journey to two of the most amazing, breathtaking destinations? Imagine being beneath the dazzling northern lights or cruising through the majestic fjords, um, going to the thermal hot pots or hot springs. I mean, there's so much that comes to mind when you think of Iceland and Norway. And we are so excited for you to join us today. We've got a webinar for a tour that we have got planned this fall with Michael Phillips. We're so excited to have Michael join us today. This is a presentation he actually just presented at our 2025 Travel Expo that we did a few weeks ago, and it was so well attended, and we had so much demand for a replay that we thought we needed to record this and get this out to everybody. So if you first time joining us, welcome. Little introduction. My name is Wendy Fracchia. I am with Morris Murdock Escorted Tours. We are the Escorted Group division of Morris Columbus Travel. As a company, we've been in business for over 65 years, and we're very proud of that. We really do feel we are one of the best companies to travel with. We've got such a solid foundation. We have got the most experience. We've got the best tour products and the best tour managers, as you'll see with Michael and the presentation that he is going to do. So again, Michael, why don't you give us a brief introduction on your history? What makes you so excited about Norway and Iceland? You've put together this magical tour. I can't wait to see the presentation because I'm one of the ones who missed it. And you always do such a fantastic job just pulling us all into the destination. And why don't I just let you take over from there?
Thanks, Wendy. And I should say, Wendy and I have worked together for a very long time and done a lot of trips, at least planned them together. One of these days, I'm going to make her actually come with me.
I'm dying to.
So I was so excited to put this tour together. And my background, I was an academic and I taught at Brigham Young University back when they had an alumni travel department. And I started leading tours for them when we had a lot of alumni who wanted to travel with a professor. That group was exiled from campus, and I eventually left to go into the world of consulting, but then wanted to keep my finger in this. So every now and then I put together a tour and lead it. I don't do it very often, but now that I'm getting a little older and am an empty nester, my wife Becky and I kind of stew on something that would be fun to do. And we've kind of got a group of people that like to travel with us, and they're always game to come along. And people often say to me, you know, what are places that you really want to go back to, or what are places that you haven't traveled in that you want to go to? And when I put this tour together, it's a combination of those two worlds. I love Iceland and want to go back. And I, believe it or not, I've never been to Norway. So it's a combination of places I've been and places I want to go. I feel like I know Norway. We have a lot of family heritage from Norway. And so it's a combination of those two things. And we're getting to the point that we're kind of thinking about bucket list in our lives as we get a little bit older. And so one of the things too is what do we want to get done? And so this in many ways, I think for us is probably a one time. We probably have one time to do this. And so we thought about it very carefully. And people have said, well, why September? And I'll just give one other point on why the tour is when it is. The Northern Lights can be seen from September to April. During the winter months, the days are so short, it's very hard to travel. During the summer months, you can't see the northern lights, and the days are so long, it's hard to sleep. So September and April are these perfect months because you're just hitting the solstice. Days are 12 to 14 hours. And in September, you've still got a little carryover of the warmth from the summer. So the average temperatures in Iceland and Norway during the month of September are in the 50s and 60s. So this is not going to be a hot tour, but it won't be a terribly cold
It'll
one.
be comfortable.
It'll be very comfortable for traveling. And one of the things I did at Travel Expo that I'm not doing today, for the first half of my presentation, I wore a nice big Icelandic sweater, and then I took it off and put on a nice big Norwegian sweater, because probably one of the big things that you buy in either of the countries are their wonderful woolens. And so we'll get a chance to wear nice sweaters and travel. And so I want to show you what we've planned for this wonderful trip.
Oh, this picture is amazing. And I'll tell you what, I might just end up on the trip after all because Northern Lights are 100% like high on my bucket list.
Well, we'll get to the Northern Lights. This is the midnight sun that you see in the
Right.
picture, and the colors that it produces are really spectacular. And we'll get a little bit of a taste of that, especially in Norway, even though we're kind of at the end of the summer. And this is a picture in Iceland, and this is a mountain that we will see that's just spectacular and interesting and wonderful. The highlights of the tour in Iceland will spend our entire time in Reykjavik, which I really like. I always like when we can stay in one hotel and kind of do day trips. So in Iceland, we'll stay in a single hotel. We'll go out and do the Golden Circle. I'll talk about that, the Snæfellsnes Peninsula, and then the southern shore of Iceland. And then in Norway, we'll fly from Reykjavik to Bergen. From Bergen, we'll go up the fjord, the Sognefjord. We'll stay in Balestrand. We'll see Fjaerland, Flam, and then we'll come and finish our tour in Oslo. And I'll show you how we're going to get there.
You
So,
know, one of the things I love about your tour is it has some of the benefits of a cruise, such as the time that you're in Iceland. It's the unpack once and do
yeah,
those adventures. And yet you're going to get to see the inland of the country and not just port cities.
yep.
I think that's amazing.
And the other bit, if you're a cruiser, we're going to cruise up the fjords.
It is happening.
We won't spend, the nights on the boat, but you'll see the wonderful places we get to see. So these two pictures I just love. In Iceland, that's a picture of Reykjavik. And in Norway, that's one of the little towns that we will see along the Sognefjord. Here's a little picture that I thought might position us well. So when you think about the Nordics, and I am calling this kind of a Nordic adventure or Scandinavia, those terms are interesting. Nordic, of course, refers to the north, and in all of the five languages, Finnish, Swedish, Norwegian, Danish, and Icelandic, there is a term north that is Nordic. The term Scandinavian is a little more interesting because it refers to descendants of kind of the Vikings. And so you get these areas that were either where the Vikings came from or where they settled. And in Reykjavik, we'll see lots of kind of big, sturdy people with red hair and red beards. They have very much that kind of
Viking.
history, very Viking. And what's interesting is they talk about the Scandinavian diaspora. And when academics talk about it, they'll have it start with Leif Erikson and the Vikings, but it continues up into the 19th century in particular. And one of the interesting things about the history of this area is after the advent of many vaccines, especially for things like smallpox, the population grew rapidly and people began to leave. And if you think about some very common first names in Scandinavia, and let me give you a list of them: Niels, Hans, Ole, Lars, Peter, Anders. And then you think about the most common last names in the United States: Nielsen, Hansen, Olsen, Larson, Peterson, and Anderson. That tells you
Wow.
exactly where much of our stock came from in this country. And most people don't have to go too far to trace their genealogy back into the Nordics. So I think that's kind of cool, right?
Yeah, everybody loves that.
Yeah, and we're all connected. And I'll tell you a little bit about some of the work we've done on my wife's line into our Norwegian ancestors that's really interesting. But with this map, you can see where Reykjavik is. You can see I put a dot for Bergen and Oslo, so you can see a little bit of where we're going. But let's start, well, let's start here.
With
Um,
the trolls, of course.
these countries are fascinating with the way they feel about trolls and fairies, and it's just fascinating. But we'll see trolls everywhere, especially in Norway. So they
I
are
love that.
inviting us to come. The two countries each have kind of a little name, and Iceland is the land of fire and ice because you have all of this wonderful icy mountain ranges and you've got lots of glaciers, but then you have all this active volcanic activity. And it's fascinating because some of it is mountainous, but much of it is because the two tectonic plates of North America and Europe cross right at Iceland. And so you get areas where you'll get volcanic activity and flow coming up through fissures in the ground rather than from a huge mountaintop. But if you look closely at this picture, you see all of these tourists out on the ice
Wow.
to see the lava flows. So it's
I
quite a fascinating country.
yeah, just get a little closer.
And usually there is a volcanic activity and it causes great amounts of steam as that magma hits the ice and the icebergs and whatever all it hits. And so we'll have a chance to see a bit of that. That's kind of the middle of the country. I really wanted to get us in the ambiance of Iceland. So I'm going to take it's about 2 minutes, but it's worth I want you to see this video and it needs a little bit of background. This was actually created by Hobby Lobby in the United States as a Christmas advert. And they went to Iceland and they found an Icelandic family, not of actors, and it's a mom and a dad and a daughter, very typical in Iceland, one child. And they filmed this at their farm, like so many people in Iceland, they raise sheep. And here's a little daughter coming home from school every day and doing something very unique. And I'll give it some narrative as it plays. It's got very soft sound and music in the background. None of that matters. But this will get you in the spirit of Iceland. So here you see this sweet, wonderful Icelandic girl, and she's running across the lava bed after she gets dropped off from school out to her family's little farm. And this is the lava that she's running through. And
Wow.
it's just that is what so much of the country looks like. And this is what we'll see very much in April. Sorry, in September. And here you see she's coming home from school, but it's already starting to get dark, which is also very difficult, obviously. And this is her actual mother, and that was her father out tending the sheep. But each day she's coming home from school and going secretly into her bedroom to work. And you see she's wearing these wonderful sweaters. And in a minute, you're going to see a sweater that she's wearing that is in a typical kind of and it is, of course, Christmas time. And there's some religious connotation to this video as well that won't be lost on most people. Look at these fabulous wool sweaters she's wearing every day.
I was going to say, I was just getting the looping on what she's doing. Every day she's coming home and sewing.
Every day she's going and hiding in her bedroom and sewing. And her mother's one. This sweater is a typical Icelandic pattern. And I'll say a little bit more about those things. And here you can see it getting darker and darker and darker every day. It's just beautiful. Well, but somehow the ambiance just captures Iceland. Here she is. She comes home and her dad is shearing her. And it's winter and it's cold. This kind of chokes me up. She decides her little sheared sheep needs a little covering. She has made him a nice blanket.
Aw. That's adorable.
That captures for me kind of the ambiance, the feel of Iceland. I'm going to use my cursor here
That's sweet.
to show you some things here. So this is Keflavik. Keflavik is where the airport is, and that's where we'll land. This is Reykjavik. This is where we will stay. This is the Golden Circle, where we will travel our first day. This is the Snæfellsnes Peninsula, where we will travel our second day. And this is the South Shore, where we will travel our third day. And you'll see the rest of the country, the whole middle area is just volcanic. Nobody lives
Just
there.
barren.
It's barren ice and lava. And then there are small settlements around the outer edge, but they're difficult to travel to. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to head into this wonderful republic. It's very small, 317,000 people. They speak Icelandic, but most people also speak English. And it's very small. It's 39,000 square miles. So it's a small country. We will land at Keflavik, and as is a tradition in Iceland, on our way to Reykjavik, we will stop and we will soak at the Blue Lagoon. And this is my youngest son, who's now home from a mission and older, but here's a trip he and I took to Iceland, and here we are at the Blue Lagoon. And that will be a wonderful way after a long flight to kind of get started.
Beautiful thermal pool.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. And then we'll head into Reykjavik, this wonderful small city, but it's the home of most of the population in town. And in Reykjavik, these beautiful homes, and we'll see the homes in both Iceland and in Norway. They paint bright colors, and it only makes sense when they've got these long winter nights. But you know what's interesting to me is these Scandinavian countries regularly rank as the happiest, the healthiest, and with the highest standard of living in the world, even with those long, dark months. And Iceland and Norway are right up there. You can see this beautiful cathedral in the background. We'll take a walking tour and go up and see this wonderful cathedral. There's my son again. It's beautiful and very Scandinavian inside, very plain, very white, but it just towers over the town. Here's a picture of it
Wow.
on a night with the Northern Lights. So kind of a beautiful scene, that same cathedral. In our walking tour, we will stop at a wonderful place called the Knitters Cooperative, and there are hundreds of people, mostly women in Iceland, who knit. And then they bring the sweaters and the other things they knit to the Knitters Cooperative, and you can buy them there. That's where I bought sweaters for my family at the Knitters Cooperative. So they're all handmade. And this is the traditional Icelandic pattern to have this kind of collar around the neck and on the upper shoulders. And they knit in lots of different colors, and they're just beautiful sweaters. Kind of the difference between the Icelandic wool is it's all hand knit, and then we'll go to Norway where it's machine knit. And so a little bit different, but all taking advantage of the wonderful wool. Iceland's an interesting place. We've said it had about 300,000 people. In the winter, it has about 500,000 sheep, and in the summer, it has about 800,000 sheep. So the sheep outnumber
There's a consensus for the sheep.
the areas indeed. Um, we will do our first tour in what's known as the Golden Circle, and there are three things in particular we'll see there. First, Pingulur National Park, which is spectacular from a just a landscape point of view, but it's famous because it is where the first meeting of kind of tribesmen was held well over 1,000 years ago. It's considered the oldest democracy in the world. And so historically, it's a very important spot where kind of this democracy was formed. And you'll also see the effects of the tectonic plates shifting. These are actual crevices in the earth where those plates have moved. And we'll see these in Pingulur National Park. Lots and lots of really interesting rock formations, a lot of waterfalls that we'll see around the country. And then
Wow.
we will go to see the geysers in a geyser basin, especially the Stroker geyser. And the name geyser is an Icelandic word. And so if we know about geysers at Yellowstone, it's because of an Icelandic word for where thermal activity comes out of the ground. And then we'll go to the beautiful Gullfoss waterfall. It is the third stop in the Golden Circle. And
Wow.
how it looks, here's how it looked one April when my son and I were there. And I'm every picture he's wearing this hat that I think I gave him for Christmas this that year.
The naughty.
I gave him a naughty and a nice hat, but he wore the naughty hat everywhere, and he is not a naughty kid. So one of the other things we'll do, because I enjoyed this so much when we were there, is we'll make a stop at a geothermal greenhouse. Iceland is an island economy. They have to import just about everything, but they have all of this geothermal heat and geothermal electricity. They really can't grow anything because of the short season and this very volcanic earth. But what they can do is they can build these fabulous greenhouses, and they can both electrify them and heat them with their geothermal assets. And this is a wonderful one where they now grow all of their own tomatoes. They grow them
Wow.
vertically, and we'll have a chance to go in. One of the things that's really interesting is they have to import a hive of bees once a month from Norway because Iceland essentially has no insects. It's the one place on the earth that's considered to have no mosquitoes, but it has very few insects. And so they have to bring these in so that they can pollinate inside this wonderful greenhouse. So we'll take a chance to stop there. Well, we're talking about insects and animals. The other thing that's interesting about Iceland, they only have one native animal, and that's the Arctic fox. But every now and then they have polar bears, but they come floating in on icebergs.
Oh,
Last year
wow.
they had two arrive last year.
They're dismissed. They're displaced.
They are not only displaced, they also have to be taken care of once they arrive because they should not be there. So, uh, our next trip will be to the Snæfellsnes Peninsula. Some of the most fascinating shoreline I've ever seen in my life because it's all volcanic. It is just filled with these bridges and windows, and it is one of the most fascinating shorelines I've ever been to. Here we are in April looking at one of these kind of natural bridges that are just all over in the Snæfellsnes Peninsula. And then they have these fascinating things that they call fairy circles. When you see this, you don't see the glow around it. But when you take the picture and you get the picture back, the picture has a glow, and they call them fairy circles. And interestingly enough, about 40% of Icelanders claim that they believe in elves and fairies and trolls. And they believe in them so much that they build little houses for them. I'll be showing you a picture of that. And they build these trolls. They build stone trolls. They believe that some of the formations out in the water look like trolls, but they build other ones. And you'll just see these out and about. This was one that we saw up on the Snæfellsnes Peninsula, just kind of in a very odd place. Um, we will also have the opportunity to go out and see the Northern Lights. We'll return out into the area by the Pingular National Park in the evening. And it is probably the most ethereal experience I've had in my life to be out there. And we're standing and waiting and standing and waiting. And then the sky kind of began to shimmer and shake, and these green lights emerged. And it went on for an hour or two. It was so spectacular. And so I have high hopes, and that's part of the reason we're going in September, is we'll have a chance to see these northern lights and the way they dance and sing.
I
It
was going to say, and that is one of the realities that you mentioned. I mean, nothing is guaranteed, but you do go and put yourself in the very best position.
and if we don't see them the first night, we will go back out the second night and we'll look for them again. Our third trip will be down to the South Shore to a little area with a town called Vik. Vik is a beautiful little town on the South Shore. And these kind of lonely churches, we'll see them all over Iceland. And they tend to be white with red roofs with small cemeteries near them. This picture doesn't quite do the church justice. It's up on a hill overlooking town. And then we'll see these fantastic beaches where the stones have become cathedrals, and you can see why people might think that they're related to the elves and the trolls and what have you. We'll see some wonderful black sand beaches, which you get when you've got a lot of volcanic activity. And then on many of the beaches, they put out these stones, and there's a history with these stones that back in the olden days, ships would come in looking for strong men to come and man the ships. And they have these stones, and you would have to prove to the captain of the ships which stones you could lift. And if you could lift one that was heavy enough, you were invited to become a part of the crew. And that really carries on today, this tradition of strongmen in Iceland. If you've ever caught one of those competitions, strongest man in the world, the winners often come from Iceland, this little tiny population.
Those are incredible to watch.
Yeah, and they do still do some competitions where they lift stones, and that comes from this tradition of lifting stones on the beach to get on the crew of a boat. Neither Connor, my son, nor I qualified, so we had to
You
come.
couldn't lift that one?
Couldn't get that one, couldn't get it. We're back. Another thing we'll get to see is a wonderful big glacier, the Solheimakjökull, and so we'll take a good look at that. It's more than 700 years old, still flowing, still moving. And then
I
we'll see these from place to place. They build little houses for the elves, and they're out and about, and it's just delightful to run across them. Sorry, Wendy, what were you going to say?
I wanted to know how long you've been practicing these Icelandic words.
Ah, I say them totally wrong. I just pretend like I know them.
Well,
So
it sounds very convincing to me.
the Icelandic horse is another thing we'll get a chance to see. They're not native, but a small breed of horse was brought in many, many, many years ago, and they've been bred down, and it is recognized as a specific breed. They're beautiful. They have a very specific gait. And for me, they're something I very much associate. These are some of my pictures right here. Here's some others that I found, and we'll see these guys all around as we drive around.
So are they wild or do
They are
people
they are
they're
not. They are not.
okay.
We've flown them, and we'll see them mostly in areas that are fenced. A
Wow.
few other things that are kind of interesting. Uh, the language Icelandic, this tells you a little bit about their weather. There are more than 100 words for wind in Icelandic. Icelanders love ice cream. Any time of year, they love ice cream, and we'll see lots of ice cream shops. It's a major book culture, but so is Norway. They're major readers. In the little town of Reykjavik, we'll see lots of bookstores, and as much as 10% of the Icelandic population are published authors. They're not just book people as readers, they're book people as writers. Year
Wow.
after year after year, it is statistically the safest country in the world. It has almost no violent crime and very little property crime as well. And because of that, you'll see they joke about the fact I wouldn't know who most of them are, but you may be at dinner with the prime minister and you may see the singer Bjork at the grocery store, because they have absolutely just no fear of crime. And
That's
then finally,
awesome.
they love to soak. You would think a place like the Blue Lagoon is very touristy, but in the city of Reykjavik, there are 17 municipal pools and hot springs. And when I'm there, I go to one every night, and it's so much fun to see families out swimming in 25-degree weather, but in their nice warm pools.
I
So,
love that too. Tradition.
yep, that is the beautiful country of Iceland. From Iceland, we'll fly to Norway. And if Iceland is the land of fire and ice, Norway is the land of the beautiful midnight sun. And oh, we won't be going to Arendelle. Sorry, that shouldn't have been in there. Um, we will fly into Bergen. And you can see here, if you look on the map all the way over on the left-hand side, you'll see Bergen. And you'll see the fjords that surround Bergen, and that's where we'll go. You'll see a couple other names that you might know. Lillehammer was a host of Winter Olympics
Yeah.
there. And then you'll see Oslo, and then not far from Oslo, you cross over into Sweden, and then Finland, down Denmark to Copenhagen. Um, so Norway is a very different country. It's got 5 million people, much larger, 148,000 square miles. Um, it is a constitutional monarchy, which I think is fascinating. The current king is from a line that has been ruling the country for over 1,000 years. And because of that, Norway has excellent, excellent genealogy. In my wife's line, we have found very reliable dates for people from the 10th century that are in her family line.
Wow, that's
That's
cool.
kind of a cool thing, right?
Yeah, no, that's always such a neat thing when people can connect their, their family to their travel and just get an understanding of where they come from. And,
Right.
they can see maybe some of their personalities, coming from some kind of. So, maybe if you've always liked lifting heavy things, you can tell why now.
If you like moving rocks in your yard, there's a
Yeah,
reason why.
always been fascinated by strength. That's just
So it's called the Land of the Midnight Sun because there are 78 days of midnight sun from May to June. But of course, correspondingly, there are days of darkness in the winter. Um, it is an interesting country. It has 150,000 islands and over 1,100 fjords. So it's a very skinny little narrow country, but all of these islands. And this is wonderful Bergen. And we see its tradition as a fishing village. We'll land there, see these wonderful, brightly colored homes. We'll go in and see the fortress in town, the church, and then we will set sail on the Sognefjord. It's considered the most beautiful fjord in the world, so we'll get our sailing in. And on the Sognefjord, we will travel up to the town of Balestrand, and we will spend we will spend nights in Balestrand, a beautiful little town about as picturesque as you can imagine. From Balestrand, we will sail to Fjaerland. Fjaerland, by this picture, you'll see a couple of interesting things. I talked about the book culture in Iceland. Fjaerland is known as kind of the birthplace of these little lending libraries that we sometimes see
Oh
in other.
yeah.
They're all over this little community. People put their books out and you come and borrow one and put one back. And it starts to make sense as you think about these long winter months,
And
and
having, yeah, no, for sure.
cozy up and have your book. And look at these wonderful buildings with the sod roofs, which is very much associated with Scandinavia as well. From Fjaerland, we will cruise again down to the town of Flam. And Flam is a little town, green and picturesque and beautiful. And from Flam, we will take the Myrdal Railway and we will take a train all the way into Oslo. And we will go through these wonderful valleys and see all of these wonderful little towns and look at these bright colored houses. It's just kind of a dream almost. And then we get into this big, very modern city of Oslo, known for its architecture and art and of course is the town in which they announce the Nobel Prizes. We'll see the Akershus Fortress, a beautiful place. We'll see these wonderful Stiefkirke, the wooden churches that they've built. We will, of course, eat. Uh, we would call them Belgian waffles, but here they're Norwegian waffles. There's wonderful art. We'll see some fantastic sculpture as well as museums. We'll see Viking boats. There are a lot of people who do some reenactments in town and at some museums where we'll have a chance to see those folks as well. And I just want you to know, I am so excited about this. My final thing about Norway. Roald Dahl was a Norwegian, and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was inspired by an actual chocolate factory in Norway. And for
Oh,
those who
wow.
traveled with me before, you know chocolate is a big part of my traveling. So we will be having chocolate in Norway, if not in Iceland as well. And maybe we'll go find that chocolate factory. But I just want to personally invite you to join me and Becky, some of our longtime travelers and some new travelers who've joined us for this real once in a lifetime adventure. And I just think it's going to be this spectacular 11, 12 days together. And so we'd love to have you on board. Wendy, what have I missed, or what other questions have come up to you as I've been talking that I should talk about?
I think you've really hit all the highlights, the magic of these two countries. These have become some of the most requested travel destinations. And you can see why just from your explanations. You always do such a fabulous job. Your teaching, your academic history comes out when you start explaining things, and I love that so much. Um, I just think, whether you're dreaming of the waterfalls or the Viking history or, those epic scenery drives, the fjords. I mean, the tour really has it all. I think it's just, you know, eh, just to fall in love with Norway and Iceland, you just really have to go and experience it. Trace your ancestry. I think, like you said, there's so many of us that are connected that way because I think, as you mentioned, these countries are so sparse and they have to import so much, especially Iceland. They are two of the most expensive places to travel to.
They are.
So, people sometimes get sticker shock when they look at the cost of this tour because it is one of the more expensive ones that we offer. To that, all I can say is if you were to do this tour on your own, you would be paying so much more without the guidance, without the highlights, without the group of travelers that you'd be traveling with. There's so many fantastic reasons to do this kind of a trip with a group. And I'll say the other thing about this trip, Michael, is that we always keep your groups very small.
Right.
I think we will take no more than 40 on this one, if I understand, or is it 30?
I think we said 40 was the absolute tops. I'd be much happier with us around 30. So
I think so too. And I think that again, Michael, not only does he love chocolate, he loves the shopping, which we have hit. I think both he and Becky have scouted out some of the most wonderful places to get the most perfect things to bring home and keep you warm. So we just really hope that you enjoyed this presentation and that you've learned something about Iceland and Norway and why you want to go to these countries. And we really hope that this will be something that you're interested in joining us with this year. As Michael said, he doesn't get out on tours very often. So this is a once in like probably 10-year opportunity to do this specific tour with Michael and Becky. And so really, this is one of those things that you just need to gift yourself. Travel is really a purchase of memories is one of the things that has really been resonating with me recently is doing the experience is of course iconic and so incredibly special, but it's these memories and these experiences that stay with you for a lifetime and they change you, and it makes you understand people from different cultures so much better. And I think we're in a world right now where that is so important that we have these connections. And so, Michael, I just want to thank you for this great presentation, these beautiful pictures. You've got me very excited about it. Like I said, I think I might have to stow away on this one, but I am going to travel with you one day, and it is going to be so full of chocolate and shopping. I think I may challenge you, but these scenes are fantastic. Michael, thank you for your time. Thank you for those watching. Please, the information is here on the screen. We really hope that you will give us a call, click on the Book Now button on the website, get signed up for this tour. Do yourself a favor. You will not regret it. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you for your time, Michael.
You
And
bet.
until then, happy travels.
Thanks, everybody.